A couple days ago, I made a video about a UFO whistleblower who came forward on Reddit. I'll put a link in the description. Please go check out that video. But the gist of it is that basically this anonymous person posted on Reddit over a year ago about their experience working at Eglin Air Force Base. About a month ago, they do an interview with Ross Coulthart and NewsNation. This interview is yet to air. And he made another post on Reddit sort of not complaining, but asking why hasn't his interview aired on NewsNation yet? Why hasn't his story been told yet? So in this video, I'm going to tell his story. Now, he is yet to reveal his name and his face, but in this video, you'll learn all about that. In fact, I'm going to show some of the documents he gave me that prove who he is. He's going to be allowed to tell his own story of what he experienced at Eglin Air Force Base, what he saw about something called Site C6, this radar system that can track UFOs and potentially where they land, right? And a few other personal stories that you might find interesting, as well as seeing a craft up close landed right in front of him. So, and why did Ross Coulthart want to interview? And why hasn't his interview aired yet, right? So we're going to get into all of that in this video. So, without further ado, let me introduce the gentleman who you're about to hear from. His name is William Carter, and he goes by Bill. And these are some documents that prove his service in the military. Now, Bill was kind enough to come on, again, tell his story, explain his experience at Eglin Air Force Base and the UFO that he saw, and talk about NewsNation and Ross Coulthart. So, I was also able to confirm that those conversations with NewsNation happened and that he actually did an interview, right, as well. And here's a screenshot of that. Now, some of the information that I've shown, I've had to redact some personal information, of course, right? But just to show you, the guy is legit, and he did go on NewsNation. Now, the fantastical parts, I don't know. You'll have to decide for yourself. But I found Bill to be very credible, very earnest, very honest, just a good old boy. Yeah, I'm from Texas, just a nice gentleman, right? So sit back, hear from Bill and his story, and let me know what you think in the comments. So without further ado, Mr. Bill Carter.
I live inside my own world of make-believe.
Let's jump right into this. Bill, thank you so much for coming on the show, man.
Thank you for having me.
Really appreciate it. Clearly I saw your Reddit post, made a video about it, right, on my channel. And you reached out through the YouTube comments, and I was able to contact you, and we went back and forth in email, and here we are. And I'm really excited that you came on, to be honest with you, and I'm really excited to share this. So, Bill, if it's cool with you, what I think would be, let's take people on a little journey here. So let's just start with how this all began. You made a Reddit post last year in July, I believe, sort of detailing, an experience and experiences that you've had. Let's kind of just go through, what that is, what your story is, and then we'll work our way backwards from there.
Yeah, I had posted about my experience on Eglin and how interesting the base was, because I'd never seen any place like that before. And
Eglin Air Force Base, right?
Yeah.
Just to be clear, right?
Eglin Air Force Base. My unit was sent there in 2009 because we were getting ready for a train up. We were going back overseas again, and they would send us there just to get us acclimated to the heat and things like that. And we actually had two missions there. One was marijuana eradication, and the other one was doing garrison security with the Air Force Security Force guys. And when we got to the base, we had a what you call guard mount, is where they get you together at the beginning of each day, and they tell you, where you're going to be going. They tell you about the base
Okay,
and
yeah.
the different sectors. And um, the first day we were there, it was my unit, the Air Force Security Forces, and the contractors there. And this gentleman that came out and talked to us, he said that if we were lucky, we could ride with the Marine Patrol and possibly get to see some space debris or space junk that happens to fall in the waters there surrounding the base. Well, I pretty much forgot about him telling us that, and I just remember thinking, well, I'm not going to do that because I'm not going to touch anything in the water that's fell out of space and catch a disease or something. So like I said, I put that in the back of my head, and we all kind of gave a little chuckle and moved on. And one of the days, I was riding with one of the security force guys, and we went up to Site C6, and I didn't even know the name of the place at the time. I thought it was a strange looking building, and it's a restricted site. You have to have um, permission to get in there. All the military police have at least a secret security clearance, and the fact that I was riding with the Air Force Security Force guy, we had no problem getting in there. We walked in, and to the left of the place, there was a guy at a podium. He was somebody that checked IDs, and the guy I was with, he walked through the little foyer there they had, or the lobby, and he went to talk to some guy in a white lab coat. And I'm sitting there just kind of looking around, checking the place out, and I see this mission statement they have on the wall. It says, "We monitor all space activity, terrestrial and extraterrestrial, from planet Earth." So when I saw that, I immediately started having um, memories of something that happened to me when I was a kid. When we were living in Danielsville, Georgia, right outside of Athens, I had a UFO experience with my mother, and I was very young. I was about 4 years old, but I'll never forget it because um, the place we lived, it was just a little small trailer park, had maybe 8 trailers. There was like 3 or 4 on each side, and they had a road that went through the middle, and there was a little barbed wire fence at the end of it. And I remembered looking out into the pasture, and there was this huge, uh, what looked to me like a fire going on at first. I thought it was a fire. And I kept looking at it, and I could see it was like casting shadows on the ground. And my my mother, I could hear her, like, trying to get my attention. She was behind me. It scared her. I mean, I wasn't, I guess, old enough to be scared at the time. I didn't realize, it was something, just anomalous at the time. So I get behind her, and later on, when we talked about it years later, she told me I kept trying to look around her to see it. And she took us into the trailer, locked the door, and I later on I asked her why she didn't call the police or anybody, and she said there were so many sightings down there at that time in the 70s that they were putting people in like mental institutions that reported it.
Oh, wow.
And she said everybody was seeing them down there, and they actually had one follow them over their car one night before that incident. And she had never told me that. But we left Eglin, and there was a couple of more things that I saw there. Like there was one day that I was riding with another Air Force Security Forces guy, and we are having lunch by this tarmac that has a huge hangar on the end of it. And I noticed these white planes with no tail numbers at all. I said, "What are those planes?" Because I'd never seen one unmarked like that. And he said, "Oh, we refer to them here as secret squirrel planes." And I said, "Well, who uses those?" And he said it was the CIA, that they came down there to do like different projects and things, and then they'd fly out to wherever they went to. And I remembered one day when we were supposed to be out doing marijuana eradication, but at the time we were just having fun driving the Humvees, hitting mud holes, and going mudding out there in the swamps.
Yeah.
Never found any marijuana anyway. And I stopped one day, and I was trying to find a place to go use the bathroom,
Yeah.
and I heard something over my shoulder, and I looked, and there were these two columns of guys squatted down in the forest there. They were sitting like Indian style, two rows. There's probably about 20 guys, 10 in each row. They were all dressed in black. They had black helmets on. They looked like older guys. They did not look like regular soldiers. I mean, these guys looked like in their 30s or 40s. And I thought, well, these old looking guys to be like the only special forces type groups that I knew were there were the Army Rangers, because they were just like 5 miles down the road from us. And then I knew the PJs were there. And they weren't dressed like that. I've never seen just full blacked out gear. So I looked one of the guys dead in his eyes, and I just kind of smiled and waved, and they didn't crack a smile, they didn't blink or anything, and I hopped back in the Humvee and took off. And later on, I'd heard things about retrieval teams from there, but I don't know if that's what they were, but I know they were definitely dressed different than anything I'd ever seen. So um, I had all these memories coming flooding back from when I was a kid. And just about 2 years ago, I finally opened up about it because it just got the best of me. I couldn't get the sight off my mind. And I talked to my mother, and she couldn't believe I remembered it. I said, well, it was the most extraordinary thing I'd ever seen, but for years I thought I had dreamed it. And then I started remembering about the next day we had went through the fence, and we went to a place where it had been, and it was this huge black burnt circle in the ground. And I remembered us standing around the circle. I remembered us climbing through the barbed wire fence to see it. And I remembered having this like dark feeling when I saw it. I know a lot of people, have different feelings when they claim they've seen things, but to me myself, it gave me like a dark feeling. And I think that's one of the reasons that it stayed with me. But when I talked to her about it, that's when she opened up about one being over the car one night. One of the guys that was in the car with them, he came up missing later on, and they never found that guy. And so
Which car? What do you mean?
my mother and her boyfriend, his brother, and I think it was his fiance at the time, they were going down the road prior to us having this incident. And my mother's fiance's brother, he looked up out of the back glass. He was sitting in the back seat, and he said, "Hey, there's something over us here." And she said it paced them for a long time, and then it finally took off. She had never told me that story ever.
Oh, wow.
And just so happens, like a few years later, the guy come up missing. I remember it was like pulling teeth getting my mom to tell me the guy's name, and I found it online. I looked at her ex-boyfriend's obituary, and it had information about his brother, that he had been missing, and they had never been able to find him. So he was still missing, when his brother died. So um, I started digging into this place, and like I said, at the time I didn't know that Site C6 actually, the name or anything. And I found the place online, and then I finally saw a name for it. So when I originally went to the place, it looked like nothing. I mean, it looked like an old radio station you'd see on some country road somewhere. It did not look impressive at all. You would never know by looking at it. I mean, back then you wouldn't. I don't know how much it's changed, but back then you
What year is this?
2009.
2009. Got it.
Yeah,
So this is when your Eglin Air Force Base uh,
yeah.
experience happened, 2009. And the experience with your mom when you were 4, what year would that be roughly, you
That
think?
was around 1977, 78. It was like late 77, early 78. And I can remember it at the time. Little things like I remember the Leonard Skinner crash, actually, because I remember hearing these guys talk about it because they thought Leonard Skinner was one guy. And
Oh, got
I
it.
remember them talking about it. But
That's funny.
um, uh, I started, looking, up some information about the place, and I got on Reddit. That's actually how I started on Reddit. I got to a place called Machine Porn, because when I typed in Site C6, there was a big page with a picture of the site on there, and these guys were talking about its capabilities, like they were saying,
We're
like,
talking about Site C6 at Eglin Air Force Base, right?
yeah.
Just to be clear, what we're talking. Okay, got it.
And these guys were talking about how if birds flew by the radar facility, they would just evaporate because the place was so powerful. I don't know a lot about, radars and technology and things like that, but
The birds would evaporate
that's what some of the,
flying across this radar.
yeah, if they came across it, they said it
Evaporate.
just,
That's a crazy
just
word.
well,
Okay,
they said it
interesting.
would just, they said it would explode or something. Um,
Interesting.
and one of the guys I met on there was a former radar technician at the site for 3 years, from like 1981 to 84. And he told me, he said, well, if you've been in the military, and you've been to the site, he said, I'll discuss some of the things with you about it and tell you what I know. And which I gave you the chat logs about,
Yeah.
what we talked about. And, some of the things I had a hard time understanding because I'd never heard of it, like HARP, and uh, I'd never heard of HARP, and he had told me some of the other.
Well, here before we get into some of the stuff he told you, let me just ask you some questions on your story and different things, because I wanted you to just be able to talk freely and kind of get that out first. But I do have a few questions before we move to this next part here. Just facts and stuff so that people can kind of understand what's happening. So this um 2009 was the experience at Eglin where you run across the Site C6 for the first time, right? Is this also when you saw the dudes in black camo out in the woods or whatever? Same
We were there for 2
2009.
weeks. Yeah, we were there for 2 weeks. I can actually tell you because I got a Army Achievement Medal for my time there, so I know what time span I was there.
Got it. Got it. Okay, cool. And how long were you in the service as a whole?
As a whole, about 10 years. 4 active duty in the Marines. 1 year and a half with the regular Army when we were deployed overseas for OEF, and then 5 more years in the reserves or National Guard. So about 10 years total. 5 active.
And and first of all, thank you for your service. Of course, I do want to say that my father was in the Air Force, grandfather in the Air Force as well. Well, Army, I think it may have switched Air Force. I don't know. World War II. So thank you very much for your service. Of course.
Thank you.
So 2009 was Eglin. So when did you enter the service? What year would that be, more or less?
1994. I went in the service
94.
three different times. The first time I went in 94 to 98. And I got out and started college in 98, and I went 90, 98, 99, 2000. Then I transferred, went to Alabama after that, and um, My junior year, I was needing some more school money, so I went back into the service. I went in the National Guard in 2003, and as soon as I went back in, they were jerking our arms off to go get deployed because it was after 9/11.
Yeah.
So we got deployed in '05. We came back in '06, and I was stop lost when I was over there because my contract had ended when we were overseas. My contract ended about 5 months before we got back, and about 10 years later, I got a small check for my inconvenience of being stop lost past my contract. And when I came back, I still was a year shy of graduating. So I was working for a couple of years, and I decided the only way I was going to get finished was if I went back in. And at the time, I was still healthy enough to go back in. So I did. I
Yeah.
signed up for 3 more years and went
Oh,
from
wow.
'09 to 2012. Plus, I was raising my son by myself. I divorced, and we split ways, and I had custody of my son. So I did that
Yeah.
for support as well. And I finally, in 2012, I'd had so many like operations and surgeries and stuff, I couldn't stay in. I couldn't pass the physical anymore. So, yeah, I'm a disabled veteran now.
Got it. Got it. Okay. Well, I'm so sorry to hear about that. To be honest. Okay. So before we jump into this conversation you've had with this other radar technician, I believe that's the title that he had and that you gave, and then we're going to jump into this NewsNation stuff too. But let me just ask you this: like, what besides your personal experiences when you were a child, with your mother and clearly the experience she had too, which is interesting as well. What about your experience at Eglin seemed anomalous? Or does it make sense? Like what
Well,
like why would you want to come and forward and tell your story and think people would be compelled to hear it? Because so far the stuff about Site C6 or whatever, I don't know. Nothing sounds too crazy so far of anything you've said.
right. Um, it basically just,
Or maybe I'm missing something here.
well, to me, after seeing what I saw when I was a kid and knew that they actually monitored the things from there, um, I've
What
seen,
do you mean monitor the thing? Like what do you mean by that? You're
well,
saying
like when you go into the lobby, their mission statement says, we monitor all space activity, terrestrial and extraterrestrial, from planet Earth. And that kind of just hit me like,
do you
the
think that's
shot.
maybe like a little like ad astra
Right.
sort of
Oh,
thing,
yeah.
like
Oh,
what I
yeah.
mean, like
Yeah.
not
I know.
necessarily, oh, we got ETs here, but just like mission statement kind of
Yeah.
ingest a little.
Yeah.
I don't
I've
know,
seen that many times. A lot of units I was in did that. But I just felt like there was something
a little bit
next
more
level
behind that.
happening. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
I feel you. Okay.
it was because, for one thing, it was a restricted site. And if there was nothing really going on, it wouldn't be restricted, for one. It did not look like anything uh, imposing or anything that would be that technologically advanced.
Yeah,
So, but it definitely had my curiosity because I had not had those thoughts about what I experienced when I was younger for years.
sure.
And so when I met the radar technician and he, started talking to me about the place, I felt a little bit better finding more information out about the place because I wanted just to kind of cool my curiosity about it. So,
Sure. How
um,
did you verify that he actually was this radar technician? Like he was who he says he was?
well, I never saw his DD-214, but he's got the unit logo and everything on his page, and he's also told me stories about guys he served with there, and that's
So you
another story.
believe him? Like you
Oh
believe
yeah,
that he was in the military? Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and he had told me about companies he worked for that I'd never heard of.
The city burns, there's no return. Never saw it coming.
And like I said, I'd never heard of the heart thing. Um, and he got into telling me about
Yeah, what is this HARP thing? Let's hear about this. What does
HARP.
that
I
mean?
really don't know much about HARP.
It's
From
like
what
an
I
acronym, you think?
It was, yeah, yeah,
HARP?
yeah, it is. Yeah, it was something to do with launching stuff out in space and then it coming back down to Earth. Some people have talked about it being like weather manipulation or something like that,
Okay, interesting.
and alluded to that. But there was a some kind of big stink over it, because there's a lot of controversy over it. I mean, you could probably read up on it online, but I didn't really know enough to ask about HARP. I'd never heard of it. And
You're saying there was controversy about HARP online?
yeah, there was
Oh, interesting. Okay.
something about what they were doing to the environment or something.
Oh,
Uh,
okay. Is HARP
there were
like
some,
a
and it was,
system, a program? What
it's some
exactly?
kind of, yeah, it's some kind of system. I think they moved it to Alaska.
Oh,
I
okay.
think that's where they
So so it has nothing to do with Site C6.
actually. Well, he said there was some involvement with HARP at the site, and I don't really
Interesting.
know exactly
How
what they
that
were doing there. I mean,
how that works. Okay,
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I just, like I said, I didn't know much about it till he started talking about it.
I wanted to ask a question, a couple questions here about HARP, the High Frequency Active Auroral Research Program. Several of you at the table have a little bit of a piece here. As you know, this is located up in Alaska. It's currently funded by the Air Force Research Lab. It was formerly funded by the Office of Naval Research. One of the prime customers is DARPA, which is currently running experiments at the facilities here. So questions to several of you this morning. I'm told by the president of the University of Alaska that the Air Force has pulled its support for the facility and they're taking steps to demolish it or take it down this summer. He's making the argument that there is other opportunities for us and is trying to find a path where the university might be able to take title to the facility. I'd like to start with you, Dr. Prabhakar. I understand that a lot of folks here on the committee probably don't understand what HARP does. I think most Alaskans don't really know what HARP does or why the agency is involved in it. So a very brief explanation and then a more direct question. Would you be disappointed or would you lose something if HARP were to go away?
Senator Murkowski, as I think you know, one of our programs has been using the HARP facility for the research that it's pursuing. And my understanding is that we did get value out of that interaction. The P in DARPA is projects, and we're not in the business of doing the same thing forever. And so very naturally, as we conclude that work, we're going to move on to other topics. So it's not an ongoing need for DARPA, despite the fact that we had actually gotten some good value out of that infrastructure in the past.
Understood. Then to Dr. Walker and Mr. Schaefer then, Dr. Walker, your agency is currently running the facility. I've mentioned that it's our understanding through the president of UAF that the plans are to move forward and demolish the facility this summer. So the question to you is that accurate? Can you explain why? And then perhaps to both you and Mr. Schaefer, is there any benefit in exploring a potential relationship with the University of Alaska to perhaps take over the HARP?
Yeah, thank you, Senator. The Air Force has gotten great value out of HARP in the past. We took over from the Navy and managed it and actually did a number of experiment campaigns up there and have finished our work that we're interested in doing up there. We've moving on to other ways of managing the ionosphere, which the HARP was really designed to do, was to inject energy into the ionosphere to be able to actually control it. And but that work has been completed. The Air Force has maintained the site for other government agencies to use for several years now. And with DARPA completing their project, that's our last government customer that we have in the site.
What else did this guy say that you found interesting?
Well, the most interesting thing that he told me was that they definitely monitored UFOs when he was there, out in the Gulf, and he
And what
said
years was he in?
he was
80.
there from 81 to 84, and then he
Okay.
had friends that worked there after he left, and he had told me one of his friends that worked there died. They told him the guy committed suicide, but he said there was never a body for this guy. And he went in to tell me like there had been several lawsuits because I guess of radiation exposure and stuff around the site. Like over the years, I guess guys that had worked there had brought lawsuits against the Air Force for working there and exposure to it. And
Hmm.
so that,
That's
you
interesting.
know, he was telling me that after he left, they were involved with the Gulf Breeze incidents. They were monitoring those after he left, according to his friends that were there when he left. And also, he said that one night when he was there, they brought something on a flatbed truck. He didn't get to see what was under it, but he said they never brought anything up there like that. And he said that it was something that they brought up there late at night. And he also said that when you were watching the radar, if you fell asleep at the controls, they would have the guards come in and escort you out, with guns and everything else just for falling asleep there.
Oh wow.
So it was pretty serious about watching, the screens and the radars there.
Hmm. What
Now,
Oh, sorry. Are you done with the stuff that he said? I didn't want to.
no, the site itself, and I've heard Christopher Mellon talk about capabilities, but he's never mentioned Site C6 in particular. But I knew what he was talking about when he said we had radars that could track things 22,000 nautical miles into space the size of a grapefruit. I knew he was talking about Site C6 on
Size
Egg.
C6.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Interesting. Do you have you heard about David Grush's claims that he was read into a UFO program that could, you know, observe these UAP coming in
There's no
at a
doubt.
certain frequency? Do you think this is the same system?
Oh, yeah. There's no doubt in my mind. Like I said, they hide this place in plain sight. And, if they can track objects, and from what I understand, they can track like 30,000 different objects out there at a time with this
I
radar.
was actually going to ask that. Yeah, how do
Uh,
they with all the
and,
space clutter?
and I guess they probably have something like if it's something is showing to be like controlled movements or something, it probably
Certain
can.
observables, right?
Yeah,
That they can. Okay, that's
yeah.
interesting. All right, but
And
you personally never witnessed anything at Eglin that it was just all peculiar stuff. Nothing, extraordinary. Let's say you never saw a craft. You weren't read
never
into
saw
some.
UAP there. No.
Right. You never saw UAP at this place. You were never read into any program. Well, the reason I say this is because this term whistleblower, and I kind of used it myself. There's a lot of people that use that term. Do you think you're a whistleblower? Like, do you
Well,
think that's what you're doing? Like blowing the whistle on
well,
this?
when I think about it, I don't think too many people know about the site there. Um, and coming forward, I know that a lot of people can't get the government to acknowledge certain things like the capabilities that the military has to monitor these things. So, I mean, I feel like it's whistleblowing because you're telling people about the site that it is restricted, and most people don't know what goes on there. Yeah, the site is online; you can read about it, but it doesn't tell you that they also monitor UAPs there, which they definitely have the capabilities to do that.
Sure. But let's be real, UAP is just unidentified anomalous phenomena, right? And UFO is just unidentified flying object. Nowhere in those names does it identify as alien, right, or ET. In fact, the whole designation of those acronyms is that it's ambiguous, right?
Yeah,
That it is
yeah,
unknown. So
yeah,
I don't know. Like you don't really have any proof or anything that says that's what's happening at this place. I do find your story very interesting about what's happening, for sure. Like, I guess that's I'm just saying this because that's what people are going to be saying in the comments. I can
and
already tell
if
what the comments are going to be. So, like, how would you address these sort of
well, you
comments?
know, you you have to connect these dots here. So if they have the capabilities to see something that far out, right? Then that tells you they probably know where they land when they come here, and they know where they
Okay,
go.
that's interesting. Yeah, yeah, that's
And
interesting.
and and that's where people haven't connected the dots here. You know, they know we got craft. The government's admitted to that, right? Um,
Wait,
and
wait. The government has admitted to craft?
well, when you talk about Grush, he's came out and said it, and I
Okay.
think during the I think it was the hearings with the Secretary of Defense. They admitted to it during the hearings that they had.
Guess I got
That
to
they
re-listen to that.
Yeah, they had pictures like cockpit pictures. It wasn't very good. It was all distorted and all that stuff. And they showed those pictures, and they weren't really anything interesting, right? Um, but what I'm saying is, if they have that capability, then not only do they know where they come from, but they know where they go once they get here, and that's important. Even
Sure.
if even if you
Probably
don't.
the most important, if I'm being honest. I'd rather have the second half of that than the first half.
Mhm.
Knowing
Uh,
where they go, maybe not where did they come from, right? Like, where they went, because if you're just seeing them coming in and then you lose them, I think that's worse than the other
Now,
way. So, okay, that's interesting.
when we were on Eglin, twice we were made to evacuate the area. The first time was like the first day or two we were there. We were about 5 miles away from the Army Ranger camp there. And they just told us, hey, get lost. They said it was some kind of bombing range or something close by, and the wildlife, it scares them, and they just wanted us to leave. That way, friendly fire or something wouldn't happen. So
Sure.
the last time it happened, we were outside playing cards at night, and they came out there and rushed us all in. We were living in Quonset huts there, and we didn't have a curfew, so we were just kind of like, why'd they want us in, But they just told us, hey, everybody in. And I've heard since then that maybe they have something flying that they don't want anybody to see, which is understandable. We couldn't see them at night anyway, unless they were
Sure.
lit up.
I mean, well, that brings up a good point, right? You served in the military, you served our country for a long time, right? What are your thoughts about, like, this national security aspect to, right? Do you think it's possible that some of this is actually just to cover up our own advanced tech? Maybe
No,
make it look like it's something else, right? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
yeah, I think they may have some advanced tech, but I also believe that whatever these UAPs are, they're from somewhere. I believe those are real, just
Not
from
Earth.
yeah,
You think not
just
Earth.
from well, who knows the origin really, but I
Sure.
just know what I personally saw that I'll never forget, and I, I I've heard people say, well, that's probably some experimental craft. And I was talking to somebody about this earlier, and they probably just put it out there to test the soldiers or whatever. That would never happen. I mean, there's probably been cases of things that, wouldn't hurt anybody, but they're not going to put something out there that may get a pilot killed. Um,
Going to
just,
chase it down or look
yeah,
into it or whatever. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
yeah, they're
That's
not
a
going
that's
to
an
do.
interesting point, actually.
And I argue that point with a lot of people when they talk about, oh, they just, stuck some experimental aircraft out there for the pilots to chase. Said, they are very protective of those planes, and they're
Sure.
not going to put something out there that could possibly get somebody killed. They would have a lot of explaining to do, for one.
Yeah. Yeah.
And believe it or not, most of my experience in the military, they were really concerned with safety. So I don't,
I believe that.
yeah.
Yeah, I believe that 100%. No, that's very interesting. Have you had any experiences since you were a young boy with your mother and you saw that craft?
I've had a couple of sightings since then, and I believe there is some truth to the what you call the hitchhiker effect. I really do. Um,
Okay, and the hitchhiker effect, were assuming we both think it's the same thing, right? You have an experience somewhere, and when you leave that place, it follows you. It hitchhikes with you back, no matter where you go. You start to experience other anomalous phenomena, right?
yeah.
Is that what you mean?
Yes.
So, do you think that hitchhiker was from the event when you were 4 years old,
Uh,
or what do you mean?
well, it's little things like we would come home, and I was an ESL teacher for 6 years after I
Oh,
got out,
wow. Mad
and
respect. Much
and
respect.
this was the room actually I taught in, and during the winter time, we had all the windows down, just keep it warm. And one day I came in here to get ready to teach. It was like 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning. The only way that you could raise the windows here is from the inside without taking a screen off. And I felt something cool on the back of my neck when I was, getting ready to teach because I had to teach real early, like 5:30 in the morning for
Yeah.
students overseas. And I looked behind the blinds, and my window was cracked about that much, and nobody here would have opened it up. We came home, and our sliding glass door would be cracked. Um, there's so many different things that I've seen like that really have freaked us out. And we know that we didn't do it. There's no reason I would raise a window in the middle of winter time here. It gets cold here.
Oh, of course. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Um, wow. Okay. No, that's definitely very interesting. I've heard a lot of stories about that, and I think it's quite a fascinating phenomenon, to be honest with you, that doesn't get studied enough and looked into enough. Well, look, let's jump into this next part. First, I just want to say thank you for sharing all that. So thank you for that. So so let's jump into kind of how I found out about all this. You made that post last summer. Was that before or after David Grush testified?
It was before Grush.
Oh, that's even more interesting.
Yeah, it was.
But after he had done his NewsNation interview.
No, it was before, way before that. If you go back to look at my original interview, it was over a year ago. It was way before the Grush testimony. It had I have to look at it, but it was way before Grush came out.
Okay. So you make that post, year goes by. When do you get in contact with NewsNation, or how does that work? Who contacted you? You
I sent
contacted them?
Yeah, I sent an email to Ross actually, and his producers contacted me. uh, I forget the woman that contacted me first, and then there was a male gentleman. He contacted me too about setting up a time when it got closer to the interview time.
So what was the sell, if you will, on the story from your end? Like, what was your pitch to them?
Well, I was telling him about the site and what I discovered, and which he was more or less concerned with, UAPs and things like that, which I never mentioned anything about seeing a UAP there, and
Got it.
uh, I just told him basically what I told you about the site, and he went through everything really quick. I mean, I've been retired for a couple of years, so I don't really talk to people all the time, and I definitely haven't talked to a national reporter like him. So
Sure.
it was a little bit too fast paced for me. When I talk about being disappointed in the interview, I just mean that it just went a little bit too fast for me, I think, and um, I I wished I could have been you know more elaborate with or
some
just
of your
more detail.
answers and
Yeah,
nuance, give better. Yeah. How long did it last? Like, how long was the interview?
I would say maybe 20 to 25 minutes.
Oh, really? So that's not even going to be the edited interview, right? It'll be shorter than that, clearly. So that was a 20-minute, and it was just you and Ross, or a producer was
Yeah,
there?
yeah, it was just me and Ross. Uh,
Okay.
we didn't have much small talk. He said, "Oh, Georgia boy, huh?" And he said, "You still got the hair?" I was like, "Yeah." And we just went into it, and I said, after so many years, it just kind of grows on you, and I, you know, cut my
Get
own
used to it.
hair most of the time.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Funny.
Looks good. Looks good. No, absolutely. Okay, so you do this interview with Ross. When did you record it?
I didn't record the interview.
Well, I
I
mean, when did they record?
Oh,
That's what I
oh,
mean.
oh,
Like,
when
when was
when
it
did the interview
recorded?
happen?
Yeah, yeah.
It was around the first week of July.
Okay,
Uh,
of this year,
mhm.
right? Of this
Yeah,
year. So, okay,
I
got it.
uh I was looking through my emails I had with the producer, and I found where he said it should air this month. August is what I read. I think I forwarded those to you.
Yeah, yeah, you did. You did. You did. I can confirm your, uh, you know, your military service, these emails that you had with NewsNation, all of that, definitely. So yeah, so you put up this Reddit post saying like, "Hey, I made this story. I told this story. I don't know if my story is going to come out on NewsNation." So are you just sharing like some frustration there on Reddit of what's
Well,
the issue? Like, you wanted the interview to come out
what
sooner, or do you think they're going to scrap your interview?
right? No, what it was, I had no idea that sometimes interviews take months to come out.
A long
I had
time
never done a
sometimes.
television interview in my life,
Got it.
and I just had no clue about when they
How
air
this
them.
works.
And I
Yeah.
had so many appreciated comments on my Reddit posts with people saying, "Don't lose heart." Sometimes they get 3 months away, and sometimes it's a year before they air them. And I
That
was
is true.
just not knowing really.
Got it. So you're cool with News Nation and Ross and right everything, and you want this interview um to come out. And from what I can tell from the correspondence you had with them, I think the most recent, it was like, "Hey, we're going to let you know it's coming. It's all kind of booked right now, but as soon as it comes out, we'll send you the link, right, to this." So um I mean, from what I can tell, it's at the end of the day, you never know. That is true. They could scrap it. They could not. It could be a last minute decision. Sometimes it's not has nothing to do with the quality of the interview. It's scheduling, it's content, it's there's a million other reasons that doesn't make it a better excuse, but sometimes business is business, even when it comes to, stuff like this. So
And I'll just say also, I had no clue how big that story got on Reddit. And a
it
lot of
did.
people asked
It was
about
huge.
why I put it on Reddit. And the
Me
reason I put it on
myself included.
I just don't use a lot of social media. I just think it's bad for you sometimes to do a lot of stuff like that.
You're not
And
wrong.
I try to keep it simple. Um, Reddit and YouTube's about it for me on you know social media. And
Reddit, what an interesting choice, because I hate Reddit. I think it's one
yeah,
of the most toxic places on the
it
internet, if
is.
I'm being honest.
People can be very mean.
Oh, they're
When
mean
I
to me
started
there
talking,
every day. I'm banned from a lot of subreddits. They hate vetted. Now
yeah,
some people love us. Don't get me wrong, but we're very divisive. But man, I get so much hate. Some of the most vile comments I've ever read on the internet have come from Reddit, which is
Reddit. And
disappointing.
I had no idea that people were even talking about my story. I got a guy um, that sent me a message that said, "Hey, they're talking about your story on Vetted." I said, "Oh,
Oh,
okay."
nice.
Which I'd seen the show a few times. I'd watched it, and so I clicked over there, and I'm like, "Okay, I'm on the hot seat." And there
I
was another one.
love it.
There was another. Um,
Mildly warm seat, I would say. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
no, man, it's been great. I wanted a chance to explain. I know a lot of people were confused about why I put it on Reddit, and what was the disappointment with the Ross interview. And it was just more or less myself, just being disappointed in myself a little bit, and
Sure.
wishing I could have had more time to elaborate. But I know he's a busy guy. I know that he's got probably a million people coming at him with stories.
Definitely.
And I
Definitely.
sent him all my military discharges and everything that I said, and to back up what I was saying. And we just wrapped it up, and he was gone. I mean, it was just short and
That was the
sweet.
end of it. Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Absolutely. Sometimes it has to be that way. He's definitely a busy guy. Definitely when it comes to UAP phenomena. If I get reached out to as much as I do, I can't even imagine the kind of
Yeah.
outreach that he gets, to be honest with you. Now, to be fair, you also were in a little bit different position than most people because you were moved into the NewsNation sort of thread and dealt with them and actually got to sit down with Ross, which is really, really cool. Regardless, right? It's a really cool thing. So look, one thing that I don't want to forget it. For the last 10 minutes I've had it pinned up here and I'm like, okay, just bring it up at some point. So I just want to, because I'm going to forget it. Something in one of the comments you made on my YouTube video, let's get that cleared up, because I made a comment in the video about what you, and I mentioned something about the skiff, like that you were confusing it with the site or something. So let's just clear that up.
Oh
You weren't
yeah, yeah,
saying
yeah,
that, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
The
Let's
skiff.
just clear that up. Sorry,
Well,
I'm an idiot sometime. It
no.
happens.
The place inside is itself is a skiff.
Because
It's a
they could be
restricted.
huge, right?
Yeah,
I read about that. They
yeah,
can be massive. Entire buildings can become skiffs.
yeah. I mean, it's a restricted site. You have to have security clearance to get in there. The guy that I was reading about today, he had commented on something, one of the posts, and said that he was just at Site C6 2 weeks ago, and
Oh, I saw that comment. Yeah.
yeah, and he said something about, yeah, this would be a place that would probably monitor UFOs or UAPs or something like that, and he really surprised me, and I was glad that he said that he was escorted there, because I've had so many criticisms from Air Force vets saying, well, there's no way you could have got in there and all this kind of stuff. And I said, I didn't go in there alone. I wasn't by myself. I had a guy with
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
And
So it's a rogue mission.
The Air Force guys, man, they tear me up. I mean, they get after me about stuff. And, I explain it, and they still, they still
Didn't
give me a
believe it.
hard time.
Sure. Sure. No, I get it. All right. Was there any other parts to this story or whatever that you wanted to clear up that you feel are misunderstood out here in public? I'm sure you've read a lot of comments and seen a lot of things. So let's clear it up. Let's feel free.
No, like I said, I was just going to, say my piece to Ross and just be done with the topic, really, because
Sure.
it's so toxic. I mean, it's such, I don't know. You got people who are skeptical about it. You got a lot of people that are, just have never seen anything. And, I understand that. And, it's taboo with some people. So,
Sure.
you know, it's just you have all different aspects of people, that think so differently about it, and a lot of people don't know what to think because they've never seen anything, which I understand that. That's why, I've seen a lot of people who study the topic for a long time, and they get where, they make a lot of sense in the beginning, and then years down the road, they're just whacked.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I don't want that to be me.
Yeah.
I've only, I've only done one other podcast, the Basement Hangout. I did that once, and that's the only interview.
And you told
Out of,
this story,
yeah,
all of this here? Got it.
yeah.
How long ago was that, you think?
Oh, that's been 6 months or 7 months ago, I think.
And you came out with your name and everything on that podcast.
Yeah,
Got it.
yeah.
Got it.
And they had interviewed Ross, actually, and they were telling me that I was I should mention them about getting him to come back on there for another interview or something. And then they said he came on once and we haven't seen him since. And I said he's probably really busy. I'm sure he is.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, you're trying to do your own content, and then people want you to come onto their content. That makes sense, right? That becomes very time, sensitive, especially when podcasters are sometimes people think, oh, we're going to go 2-3 hours. It's like 2-3 hours.
That's
Are
a
you
hot.
kidding me?
That's
Yeah,
a hot.
that's right. That's a
Maybe
lot.
maybe once a week or something like that. But
Sure.
my whole intention of saying all this stuff was
Yeah.
help people look in the right place and know that they do have the capabilities to do this, because these explanations of the footage wasn't that great because our camera was having problems or it was just too grainy to make out.
Yeah.
That's not true. They have the capability to see these things a lot more clearly than what they present to the public. So I knew it was just hogwash.
I want to see it. I want to see this stuff. Do you think there's any other, you know, sites like C6, like that are similar that we
Quaduline,
use?
from
Like, does C6 mean like there's C5 and C4 and C3? Like, I don't even know
yeah,
what that means.
you can go online and see a map of Eglin, and it has the different
Okay.
sections of the base, and it'll show. That's actually one of the ways that I found it too, was when I was looking for it. I saw the restricted sites, and I had the name of the place finally when I was doing my research, and I matched it up to the map, and I realized, hey, okay, that's it. That's site C6, and I saw the picture and everything, so I knew that it was the right place, and that it was a restricted area, because I think when we went up there that day, I didn't even realize it was a strict restricted area. Because when you're a military police, most of the time you just go anywhere on the base you want to. You have to be able to go anywhere on a base for any reason, So you don't really think about a place being restricted. You just walk in.
Sure. Yeah, of course. Oh, that's interesting. In the hearing in July last year, Matt Gaetz was there, right? And he spoke about Eglin Air Force Base and how he had been there and heard from some pilots there. I believe Luna and I don't know who else, Gates and maybe Burchett had gone to Eglin, tried to get in a skiff there and sit down and get information. Do you think this skiff that they went in is the same skiff you're talking about?
I don't know, but I knew they were going to have fun trying to get in that place and get answers, and I knew they were going to come back angry, and they did.
No, yeah, they did, didn't they? Yeah, they did.
From what I understand, the base general went on leave in the middle of them trying to talk to him.
That's right.
And they
You're right.
called Washington D.C. and they were ordered to let those representatives talk to those pilots.
Yeah. Yeah. And they got, because I made a few videos on it. They showed sketches. Well, I think that came out later in the Era Historical Report, if I'm not mistaken. The sketches that Matt Gaetz had talked about from this pilot, one of the pilots that Matt Gaetz had spoken to, and he drew out kind of, hey, this is what I saw or whatever. Yeah, I mean Eglin. That's why it's an interesting story that you're telling too, because Eglin has some fama, as we would say in Spanish, some fama, some
And like
fame,
I
I guess.
said,
Not really the same term, but
I had posted my story before they went down there. I mean, if I could
that's interesting.
actually look it up and send it to you, so to get a date. And
Oh no,
see.
I have the story. Yeah. No, I read them both on the video that I did, so I have both of those links for sure. And I will have gone over all that in the beginning because I'll tell the story and whatever. I'm sure I'll do this cool intro that'll be greatly edited, and I will look amazing, and you'll look amazing, and we'll all look amazing. Yeah, look, it's very interesting. Not gonna lie, I really appreciate you coming on, Bill. I mean that, especially last minute. This broke. You came on, reach out. I know you don't do a lot of these, and as far as I can tell, you're probably not going to do many more of these because Well, who knows? Maybe you will. I don't know.
Well, I mean, if people have, questions, like if they don't understand something I say or something, I'll be more than happy to clear it up on something, to make it clear, because
Sure.
I, I worried about that, and I appreciate you giving me a chance to explain, my post and all that stuff,
Of
because there were
course.
so many people assuming so many different things that,
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I hope I get a chance to clear this up. But,
No, I'm glad. I agree, and more people should have that opportunity. To be honest with you, some people were like, "Oh, um, I've been whatever. I've been ridiculed before for platforming people. This term that I absolutely disgust. I hate that term, platforming. I people can't even define it when they say it to me. They don't even know what they mean. All they mean is you had someone on your show I don't like. Okay, what does that have to do with anything?
yeah, I
So
mean,
I was a little worried. Okay, are people, you're platforming this guy, you haven't vetted him, this, that, and the other. And my whole approach is no, let's get on, let's talk, let the guy explain himself in his own words, have the time and space to do it, right? And feel comfortable, be able to give nuanced answers, dig in a little deeper to some certain things you've said, and people can make their own minds up. I don't need to make their minds up for them. So no, I really do. I appreciate you coming on and being willing to talk, because a lot of people won't even do that. Some people just won't even tell the story. They're gone. They don't want to explain anything. So it is
and
kind of
I think
nice.
that's wrong. I mean, if you believe in something, you need to stand by it,
Sure.
and
Sure.
if people don't understand, sometimes it's not that they're mad at you. A lot of times they just don't understand.
100%.
And today, the problem with the entire world is communication. I mean, there's just so
Yeah.
many, misconceptions about things because people don't communicate effectively enough.
Sure.
And I really hate that. So I try to my best to be as clear as I can.
No, absolutely. No, you've been very open and clear. And honestly, I can't think of any more, questions about anything. Here's what I'll say. You might have already mentioned this in the podcast, but let's just kind of end on a, positive note here, hopeful note. What do you hope happens from you coming out and telling your story?
I just hope people are more aware that we have the capabilities to see these things, and don't pay attention to a lot of these politicians and people that say that we can't see these things, and that the footage is always grainy and you can't see it. That's not true. They know. I mean, they for sure know. And if they don't know, they're going to get something up there that can take a clear picture, so they know what they're dealing with. Um, it makes me so mad when our government tries to play dumb to the people, because it's
Sure.
not right that certain people have privileged information, especially if we're not alone. We need to be telling people that. And, it's like baby steps, but you've got this lie that's been going on for so long, and they don't want to reverse themselves because they're going to open themselves up to liabilities, like service members that have been hurt probably around working around these things. So it's so hard to undo that lie. But what I have noticed they will do is they'll let people like Elizondo or Grush or something like that tell you, because they're not associated with the military anymore. And what better way to tell people is you have credible people coming out telling these stories, believable people, instead of the government saying, "Yeah, we've had these things for about 60 or 70 years now," um, and sorry, I've heard Lou talk about um, amnesty, like maybe trying to do that for the government or whatever. And I think some things could be forgiven, but I do think, where people have been hurt or threatened or something like that, I think there's, you know, no forgiveness for some of that. Because if you listen to some of those people at Roswell talk about how they were treated after the Roswell crash, that's just unsat, you know, um,
Sure.
threatening people and things like that, just because you want to be greedy and have technology to beat the other guys who probably have the same thing, um, at least tell them about these things and tell them what you got. You ain't got to tell them everything, but at least give them something so people,
Sure.
quit going crazy over it.
Yeah. Well said. Can't say I disagree. Well, Bill, thank you again for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. And yeah, just thank you for coming on and hanging out with us. I really appreciate it.
Great. I appreciate you having me on. And like I said, I watch the show sometimes too when I have a chance, and I enjoy a lot of the podcasts. And I like, the guys that do podcasts like this, especially because of their passion for it.
Sure.
And I like the fact that people are passionate about trying to get to the truth because they deserve it.
Yeah. Well said. I agree. That's what I'm about. Passionate about getting to the truth. That's it. So, all right, Bill. Well, thank you again, man.
I live inside my own world of make-believe. Kids screaming in the cradles, profanities. I see the world through ice covered in ink and bleach. Cross out the ones who heard my cries and watched me weep.